burnout itself is a state of total physical, mental, emotional,
Mm.
and it happens after prolonged exposure to high stress situations. And it gets to a point where it makes it difficult to cope with your day-to-day life, make day-to-day
Mm.
things that used to be easy, right? Weren't a big deal. All of a sudden you just do
Yeah.
before, right? A lot of people will describe that burnt out state as being just empty. Like your tank is empty, you have nothing left to give.
Welcome back to the Holistic Hormones Podcast with me, Dr. Ami Patel, pharmacist and hormone consultant. I've transformed my pain, struggle, and journey with managing my PCOS into my passion to support women to gain freedom from their hormone imbalance symptoms. On this podcast, I share practical tips that have worked for me and my clients, as well as conversations from experts in their field. Today's episode is a guest episode, and today we have the honor of having Dr. Millie Mohan with us today. Thank you, Dr. Mohan, for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this topic. It's something that affects literally everyone. So I'm sure we can all learn a few things from it. But before we get into that, I just want to give an introduction of Dr. Mohan. She is a physician turned holistic wellness coach, helping burnt out women beat exhaustion, stress eating, anxiety, and weight gain. Having experienced the limitations of the conventional medical system, she embarked on a mission of empowering women to heal from within and get into the driver's seat of their health for good. She believes true wellness is the greatest gift we can give ourselves, and the power to create a lifelong foundation of vitality is in our hands. She lives in beautiful White Rock, British Columbia. So thank you for being here and giving us your knowledge and expertise on this topic. And I want to say, like, we connected over Instagram, and your mission really aligns with what I believe, which is why we're having this conversation now. But I definitely agree that as women, we just taking control of our health, I feel, is like the foundation to succeed in all the other areas of your life. Because if you don't have your health, like, how can you really do your best at anything else?
Exactly. That's what I always say to my clients and just everyone around me. I'm always preaching health is a foundation. You don't have that, you don't have anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people think that wellness can be really expensive, but that's until you've experienced illness, right?
Yes, that's like literally what I say too.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I say, like, either you, like, yes, wellness is expensive, but either you take care of your health now when you have the option to, or you're forced to later in life when you get ill, like basically what you said. Well, your route is a little non-traditional after you became a physician. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your why behind what you do and how you got into the space?
Yes. So, I, throughout my journey of kind of becoming a physician, I was very quick to sacrifice everything in that journey. And I think that's so common, right? Like in the graduate training grind, we
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice sleep, we sacrifice nutrition, we sacrifice weddings, get togethers, and literally everything for years and years, right? I only ever went to the gym when I hated myself for everything that I had eaten, right? It was never a healthy relationship. Um,
Yeah.
just for years and years and years, I was engaging in these behaviors. And what I couldn't have appreciated back then was that just because these behaviors were really common, like everyone around me was doing it, it didn't make them benign. And I
Yeah.
definitely dealt with that in the form of so many chronic symptoms, chronic conditions. Like my mental health was the worst it had ever been. And I was so burnt out just, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I was just in the deep, dark pits of that. And so my journey really came from wanting to just heal myself. Like I
Mm-hmm.
read this, I was
Yes.
like, I need to feel better. I just can't continue caring for other people when I feel so horrendous and I can't even get out of bed in the morning? So
Yeah.
in that journey of kind of recovering the pieces of myself that I feel like I lost in this decade-long journey of education, I just came to realize so much. I realized the power of lifestyle modification, the power of empowered nutrition, the power of so many of these ancient sciences,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, there was
Yeah.
so much to this. And I was shocked that I didn't know anything about this and that this isn't a common part of medical training. I just couldn't believe it because it's so powerful. And through my own journey, I lost 25 pounds. I got off every single one of my
Oh, wow.
reversed all of my conditions. I would say I reversed like 90% of what I was dealing with, just completely holistically. And
Wow.
yeah, it's amazing. It's so
It
amazing.
is.
Like
That's so awesome.
how amazing it is. And yeah, through that journey, I was doing my nutrition and health coaching training, and I started taking clients on this journey. I developed a signature program. And now, as you said, I work with burnt out, high achieving women, helping them, really get on the other side of those annoying symptoms, the anxiety that never disappears, the stress eating, the weight gain, all of those things that are chipping away at our vitality. So that's a little bit
Yeah.
here. And I am just very passionate about teaching women that you do have the power to heal. You can heal from within and you can get in the driver's seat of your health. Ill health
Yep.
have to be this non-negotiable part of life. And I think
Yeah.
I've learned anything from the Blue Zones. I don't know if you like watch the Blue Zones documentary. I learned about it when I was doing my health
Mhm.
coaching training. Oh my gosh, it's not a non-negotiable. Like I just figured once you hit 80s, 90s, like it's over for you. Like it doesn't that's so not the case. And that has been so eye-opening for me. So
Yeah, definitely. I think like I totally find that relatable because when I was in pharmacy school, I was the same way. Like, you pull all-nighters for tests. You just do like the most ridiculous things. And then one thing that you didn't mention, but I did is like drink so much coffee and caffeine, which is horrible.
and oh my gosh, I can't even tell you the number of all-nighters that I pulled where I was drinking and
I know.
like that was the fun part of school. Like staying up in the library and getting all the snacks and all the candy and like for years and years and years. And I
Yeah.
wondered why my acne was so terrible, why my mood was so
Yeah.
like I was swollen and
Yeah. And like our professional trainings aren't short, like 8
oh,
years, right? At least 8, 9 years, like of undergraduate, like pharmacy school, medical school. So yeah. Yes. Yeah, there's like another saying that I would say, like, if we all like took care of our health and prioritize our health in our 20s, then the problems we experience in our 30s wouldn't even be there. But
yeah,
yeah, well, you could say that about like basically any age group, but going back to the concept we were talking about. But I feel like, that phrase like burnt out is, I feel like maybe it's thrown out like everywhere, like, oh, I feel like so burnt out this week. I'm just so burnt out. Like what exactly is being burned out? What are like the signs and symptoms of it? And why is it so common?
yeah. So when we're talking about burnout specifically, like stress is everywhere, of course, and that feeds into why everyone is so burnt out. And I'll get into that in a second. But burnout itself is a state of total physical, mental, emotional,
Mm.
and it happens after prolonged exposure to high stress situations. And it gets to a point where it makes it difficult to cope with your day-to-day life, make day-to-day
Mm.
things that used to be easy, right? Weren't a big deal. All of a sudden you just do
Yeah.
them before, right? A lot of people will describe that burnt out state as being just empty, like your tank is empty, you have nothing left to give. And it's
Yeah.
really common in the helping professions, right? In healthcare, it's very, very common. With first responders, it's common, but also with parenting, right? Any kind of caretaking responsibility, caretaking of elderly, caretaking of
Yeah.
loved one, and also just raising kids, right? It creates a situation where you're always on, you're always giving, you're having to prioritize others always ahead of yourself, and it creates a recipe for burnout.
Yeah. Mhm. I'm actually at my friend's house and like she has like a 2-year-old and I was just like, "Oh my God, like even if you don't want to, you just have to like they need you, and like they can't do some things for themselves and you just have to." And like I'm just like, "Oh my God." So yeah, like when you're saying that, I was just thinking,
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
like being a mom, being a caretaker of elderly,
yeah,
right? Same
yeah,
similarly.
exactly. It is. It's tough, but in terms of, I know you had mentioned symptoms. So symptoms,
Mhm.
some of the big ones are feeling really exhausted, feeling really irritable. I like to describe it as like you have these glasses on of irritability and negativity, and everything you see everything through that lens. Like you feel very cynical, you have a negative
Yeah.
outlook. A lot of times when people are burnt out, they also will start to isolate. So they're not staying in contact with their loved ones, they're not
Yeah.
socializing. You kind of burrow inwards, which only exacerbates the stress that you're under. And then other things are anxiety for sure, depression. A really common feeling within burnout is this apathetic and numbness. And I remember feeling this,
Mm.
and I'm someone who's very like emphatic. I, have a big personality. So for me, being so numb was really alarming to me because that was such a foreign feeling, and I just
Yeah.
didn't care. And yeah, now that I know that was burnout, yeah, it was just the weirdest feeling. It's the weirdest feeling. You're just blunted to emotion.
Hmm.
So
So
that's,
so like, does burnout can burnout lead to anxiety and depression, or is it the other way around? Or it's like, or is it like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like they're just kind
yeah,
of like intertwined,
I would say
possibly.
definitely that. It's hard to know. I think the thing is, chronic stress creates a situation that is very burdensome on your mental health, right? So if we don't have routines and rituals that are building our stress resiliency, then that's going
Mm.
to increase our anxiety. That's going to lead to a point of depression. And then eventually, I mean, anxiety and depression are a part of burnout as well. So I feel like it could go either way.
Okay,
It,
yeah, I could see that.
but
Yeah. And it's not like either of those things happen overnight, and it's not one thing that contributes. It's a lot of things, as you were saying, right? Like chronically over time.
exactly.
Um, what are some common like misconceptions about managing stress, as you mentioned, and like preventing burnout?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of us don't even realize how stressed we are. And this is,
Yeah.
we're so used to, right? Like we're also used to this high level of chronic stress. And one of the things that I do with my clients is I go through a list of questions and symptoms, right? And these symptoms are indicative of high cortisol. And I always find it so interesting that people will claim to not have that high of stress, but they're saying yes to every single symptom that I am asking them about. So, and I think that goes to speak that so many of us, like, we're so used to everyone around us being a little bit anxious, like really tired. No one around us ever really feels that great, right? So I think we're also used to functioning at high stress levels that we don't fully appreciate the impact it's having on our bodies. So that's one thing. The other thing is
Mm.
everything we do, I feel like in our common lifestyles are at odds with wellness, right? Like
Yeah. Well,
there,
I was gonna say, I feel like healthcare providers and healthcare professionals have the worst work schedules, like can't take vacation, just like it's just so ironic, but yes, keep going.
definitely, that was always something, that's something that I had remember talking about with with friends throughout my training, because
Yeah.
there's so many physicians who have really unhealthy lifestyles, but it's also a product of the fact that we
Mhm.
don't have time, right? Like you are constantly grinding and grinding, and this feeds into the why everyone's so stressed and anxious, right? We live in a
Yeah.
society where productivity and achievement
Mhm.
rise above all else, right? We all
Agreed.
are, have to be gunning, you have to be doing this. And I really feel like rest has been completely eroded out of our lifestyles, right? Because even if we're resting,
Yeah.
we're scrolling, right? We're never truly off. We don't know how to be off. We don't know how to
Yeah.
sit with ourselves and sit in our own thoughts. And because we're so plugged in all the time and always racing, we don't know how to be present. We are so anxious, right? We're anxious, we're exhausted because we just don't
Yeah.
rest. So unfortunately, everything that we do in our day-to-day life is so at odds with wellness. And there's this lifestyle medicine handbook written by Dr. Beth Freites, and she talks about the 3 T's. And I talk
Hmm.
about the 4 T's. I added on a T to that. And it's tech, TV, transport, and I call it tasty treats. And those are the 4 things
Mm.
that there's been a lot of advancements. And I'm so appreciative of all of those things that we have access to that our ancestors never did. but it also has created a situation where we are plugged in all the time.
Right.
We never have to walk. We're more sedentary than ever. Like lights
Yeah.
at 4 in the morning, and it's no problem. Like our circadian rhythms are so messed up. We're so
Hmm.
inflamed. We're just like, it's, you don't want to cook, no problem. In 3 minutes, you can have something at your doorstep. Like it's just, the
Yeah.
convenience is on one hand amazing that we have that, but at the same time, if we don't have practices and rituals in our life that are building up our vitality, then everything we have access to is just tearing it down.
Are you confused if your acne or hair loss is related to PCOS or something else? Could you be the 1 in 5 South Asian women or the 1 in 10 women worldwide with PCOS? Are you frustrated with being told, just lose weight, take birth control, and if you struggle to get pregnant, we can give you more meds for that? If you said yes, then my upcoming PCOS free masterclass is for you. This masterclass will be held over Zoom on Thursday, June 27th at 12 p.m. EST. Join live for a free bonus. Replay is available and questions can be submitted ahead of time. Check the link in the description to save your seat.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting. It is interesting. Our modern society is supposed to make life easier, but I think we're like the most stressed as a society than we've
Yeah,
ever been before and more
exactly.
burnt out. I know you talked about like the habits and lifestyles that are contributing to stress and burnout, but are there certain like thinking or like behaviors that contribute to burnout, like thought patterns or
Yeah, so
beliefs?
we know that type
I guess
A,
you talk. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
elaborate on this.
Yeah.
We know that type A personalities have a higher risk of burnout. And when you think about it, if you're someone who is a perfectionist, who has a hard time delegating tasks, you're probably going to take on a greater load than what is actually required of you, right? So that's definitely
Mm,
certain patterns of thinking. This is something that comes up with my clients a lot, is this inability to rest, and feeling like
yeah.
time off is a waste of time, it's unproductive, or it's lazy.
Yeah.
You feel that
Or
way.
selfish. Or selfish.
Selfish is another big one. And
Hmm.
exactly, especially when we're wearing so many hats and we have responsibilities, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate because the rest is what's going to allow you to actually show up as your best self in every
Yeah.
facet of the relationship. And this is, I just had a conversation with one of my clients a couple days ago, and I was telling her that because the rest piece was an issue and she was feeling like it is not productive for me to take time off when I really want to get ahead in my career. And I was trying to explain to her that that rest, that time that you are pouring into yourself is going to pay off for future you and your future career. Because you might be able to go at this,
Yeah.
but another 5 years at this pace, you're going to hit a wall and you're going to hit burnout and you're going to hate your life. You're going to hate your career. So instead of doing that, which is what
Yeah.
a lot of us have experienced, and then having to circle around from that, create
Mhm.
a foundation now so that you don't have to go through the hardship of that.
No, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. So it's like, I think it's like the cultural conditioning that has to be changed. And it's like having the courage to go against the grain, like prioritizing yourself without feeling selfish, which is easier said than done, but small steps to getting there and changing the mindset about it for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like as women, we are so quick to prioritize everyone else ahead of ourselves, right? Like we,
Yeah.
carrying load, we just care for others so deeply. And this is a
Mhm.
big part of what I do, is prioritizing that, or emphasizing that you too need to be on your priority list. Like you deserve to be number one on your
Yeah.
priority list. When you do that, like I said, you will be able to show
Yeah.
up for everyone else in your life. And it also creates a ripple effect, right? Like by stepping into your power and stepping into your wellness, you are giving people permission around you to do the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's very powerful. And it's something that I hope is going to start to shift with our generation, really emphasizing self-care,
Yeah.
taking care of yourself, investing in your wellness. But Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and also it's like that's all we've seen, right? Like that's all I've seen in my family and the women around me, like all my cousins, my aunts, my mom, grandmother. It's always like sometimes I look at them and I get tired. I'm like, how are you not tired? It's like they're just constantly doing stuff for other people, and then it's like sometimes it's like they're not even on their own like list of priorities. Forget being number one, like they're not even on the list. Like they hardly do stuff for themselves.
That's true. It's so true. It is hugely a cultural thing. And
Yeah.
for me, it's been tough because this concept of boundaries doesn't exist in my Indian
Mhm.
culture.
Yeah.
I-
Agreed.
it doesn't exist. And so trying to create boundaries now in my life, it's just been a very interesting journey because I feel guilt. Like I feel so much guilt. I'm like, oh, I'm so selfish. Like why is it that I need to go to bed early? And why is it that,
Yeah.
I need my space of these things? I'm like, what's wrong with me? But it really is like a perspective shift and a recognizing that these boundaries I'm putting up for myself are only going to allow me to show up better for everyone else. But it's
Yeah,
hard.
exactly. It is hard. I think it's like, I don't know. I think for me, I got to a point where I was like, well, everything I've been doing has not worked. And I don't like the way I feel. So why not try something different, you know? Um, and it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes you learn the hard way, right? With whether it be like, burnout or your like health is horrible. Um, so I think why don't we talk more about now, like maybe some like tips on how
No
we
tips
can
for you.
we can improve. So like, having gone through this journey yourself and recovering from like extreme burnout, what advice would you give to your like burnt out version? I know you said, like setting boundaries, like maybe tips on like where to get started with that because it is so difficult for us women. And like most of my listeners and viewers are of like South Asian background. And so, yeah, just tips on how we can get started with that.
Yeah. So when it comes to recovering from a state of burnout, I would love to be able to just prescribe a vacation on a beach and just go to stuff, right? Like that would be so
Yeah, it's not practical.
but obviously that's not possible for everyone. Um, so then my question that I like to ask kind of first up is where in your personal life and your career can you start to ask for help, right? So in what areas can you ask for help? Who can you ask for help? What areas in life can you delegate, right? Because sometimes with career,
Mhm.
you take on so many responsibilities. Um, and in reality, we just need a little bit of help during this period so that we can create some space for ourselves to heal. So where can you ask for help? What can you delegate? And then another thing I like to ask is what can you outsource? So
Mhm.
I know there's certain things that we have to do, of course, in our
Yeah.
personal life and at home and whatnot, but there's certain things for me that are so time consuming and draining and I hate doing, I dread doing, that for me it is worthwhile the mental piece
Right.
to outsource it to pay for like a cleaning person to come in or
Right.
whatever it is, right? And yeah, I guess before kind of figuring that out, I like getting my clients to create a list of the things that they're doing in their lives that are energizing and then the behavior
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And so to
Yeah.
take some time reflecting on this because sometimes we don't recognize what things we are doing that are really draining us.
Yeah.
And when you get clear on that, like you might realize that you dread meal prepping, you dread grocery shopping, you hate that. And so for you, it might be worthwhile, even though it is a cost, but it might be worthwhile just having that mental piece, having that break for, maybe a month, 2 months to get a meal prepping service or something of that.
Yeah.
There's literally people who are willing to do pretty much anything out there. That
It's true.
expensive. It's not that it doesn't always have to be expensive. So I think getting creative about where can you
Mhm.
delegate, where can you outsource is really important because I think a lot of us don't ask for help. Um,
Yeah.
so that's the first piece. And then the second piece is getting really clear on what is actually energizing you in your life and what is depleting you. And obviously, we can't just offload all things that deplete us. It's not possible. We can't just get rid of stress. Um, But if there's ways to start to protect your energy, to start to build boundaries, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, this is going to be 15 minutes of my quiet time and the kids, my husband's going to take care of the kids and I don't care what's happening down there. Like they can be pummeling each other into the floor, but that's my husband's responsibility to deal with. And right now, like this is my 15.
Yeah.
Wherever you can start to create those boundaries for yourself, and you can start really small, right? Like 5 minutes of time for
Yeah.
yourself. But start small and
Mhm.
up.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really like creating, and this is a big focus with my clients, is I talk so much about what I like to call a stress resiliency toolkit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. But
Yeah.
I focus so much on that because we're all so stressed, whether we realize it or not. And it's not simply enough to remove the stressor, right? Because I actually had one person I was talking to recently who said, I've reduced my work hours. I get to work from home more often, but I still feel
Mm.
so burnt out. Like that emotional piece, I haven't healed.
Right.
And the reason that that happens is because yes, it's very important to reduce the stress where you can, but you also need to be building vitality rituals into your life, right? Like you need to be building that resilience into your life. So this is where I spend a lot of time
Yeah.
with clients focusing on how can we create pockets of time for yourself? How can we start to build these resilience rituals? I actually make my clients create a toolkit for themselves. Like it is a note in their
Mm.
that they start to put in the tools that we talk about, we use, they go and
Right.
and it's a running list of things that they have tried and that actually works for them.
Mm.
So now they know, like, okay, I'm feeling kind of shitty right now. Like I know that this breath
Yeah.
work that I tried 3 minutes, I feel better every time. So that is one thing I highly recommend. If anyone out there,
Yeah.
yeah, I just for everyone, honestly, I recommend creating
Mm-hmm.
a phone and it's super helpful. Um,
Yes.
and then there's the foundational things, right? Like you have to be getting quality sleep. You have to be moving your body, even if it's for 5-10 minutes a day.
Right.
I was actually looking at this research study, this meta-analysis from the University of Cambridge, and they were talking about how walking for a brisk walk for 11 minutes a day reduced your early risk of death by 23%. And that's
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
That's 10 minutes is so doable, right? We all have that
Yeah.
even if you're breaking it up into 2-minute slots, you can do that too, right?
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
sleeping, eating nutritiously in a way that works for your body, because not all healthy foods or, things that we think we should be eating actually work for us. And then
Right.
the connection piece is really important. I think especially when you're burnt out, it's very easy to isolate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but starting to build connections with people you actually trust, you actually want to spend time with, doing an audit
Yeah.
of the social circle. Yeah, it's very impactful. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, the other things that I would say all go within the realm of creating your resiliency toolkit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so one of the big things is learning to regulate your nervous system. So really committing to like breathwork practices, meditation, somatic practices,
Mm-hmm.
being consistent about it. It takes consistency. Um, so that's one big thing. And then the other thing is really supporting your adrenals. So whether that's through like taking electrolytes every day, starting an adaptogen supplement, that again, it takes time and consistency. Like you need to be taking it for a couple of months to feel the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And changing your behaviors such that it's gentle for your body. So when we're really stressed, I've had so many people that I have spoken to tell me that they are so burnt out, but they're waking up at 5 in the morning to do a very intense HIIT class.
Uh-huh.
On an empty stomach, they're drinking caffeine, again, empty stomach. They're going long periods
Mm-hmm.
without eating. Like they're putting so much added stress onto their bodies. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't actually realize is
Yeah.
if you're especially dealing with an immense amount of stress right now. So if that is you, I would recommend, first of all, making sure that you're eating regularly,
Yes.
making sure you're having protein, fat, fiber, having caffeine with the meal, or immediately after a meal, never
Yes.
having it on its own, and ideally switching from really, really, really intense forms of HIIT and like cardio to something that's a little bit more calming for the body. So doing
Yeah.
maybe training that isn't as intense, or yoga or Pilates, just until your
Right.
body kind of heals from this. Because the whole thing is we want to decrease cortisol and we don't want to be doing things
Right.
worse. So
Yes.
those are just, I feel like I just
Yeah, that was like, that's a lot of information, like a lot. But I think it was all super helpful. And I feel like, with the first part you said about like outsourcing and asking for help, I think that's also like another cultural conditioning that has to be worked on with like thinking, because I feel like, once again, going back to like women and like, especially with like minority background, it's always like there's this expectation that we have to do everything ourselves and we should be able to do everything ourselves, and like we shouldn't ask for help. But it doesn't make sense because like we're always like trying to help others, but why can we not receive help, right? And so I think that once again goes to like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay, you don't have to do everything yourself. Like it's literally okay. And then once you actually like free up that energy, that mental emotional space, you can actually, like you were saying, connect with people like more genuinely, because you're actually more present, you have energy to give, right? So it's like a vicious cycle, but it's like stopping that cycle and then reversing it.
exactly. And I think it's
Yeah.
interesting because our parents' generation, like they grew up with support around them, right? Like typically living
Mm.
with his family, like everyone.
Yeah.
Versus now we live a lot more siloed, I would say, most of us. And we don't have the same level of support that I think our parents and grandparents did. So that's where
Yeah.
asking, right? Because prior, the help was kind of always around and
Yeah.
implied. But now I think we have to get comfortable asking for it. And it's really uncomfortable the first few times. It is so important, especially in this journey of healing. Like we all need the help and it takes a village.
I know. I was just gonna say that, like that saying, like it takes a village to raise a kid. I'm like, dude, it takes like a village for me to function in life. Like I can't get through life without like
Exactly.
support from like, yeah, people. Like I realized in the last couple of years, like I've like after I hit rock bottom and like I knew I couldn't do things myself, I had to reach out for help. So like getting help from professionals, getting help from friends and family. And I'm like, yeah, I can't function without it because clearly it didn't go the, yeah, things didn't go well when I didn't ask for help. So, yes.
Exactly. Here you go.
Yeah, I think we like covered everything. Was there anything else you wanted to add in before I give you the chance to like have, share about how people can connect with you? But I feel like we did cover quite a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
I just word vomited everywhere.
no, no, it was good. It's like really good. Yeah, no, it's definitely helpful. And I think it's always like, just finding like the one thing, like, for people listening, like one thing that sticks out that you feel like, okay, yes, that makes sense. And I can start with that is like, the first action step, because you can't go from overnight, like, yeah, I'm going to do all these things. Tomorrow I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to like go to sleep, start working out, like, just pick one thing and start with that. And then, you can always re-listen to this and then pick the next thing.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. So what are some ways that, people can connect with you? Is there like any like programs that you have going on if people want to get like a taste?
Yeah. So I have my website that is finally up and running. So that's
Yay.
wellness.com. I also have my Instagram, which is Millie Mohan MD. And on both places, so in my website, actually, you can sign up for my free starter kit, which is called the Supercharging Your Energy Starter Kit. So there's like this fun little diagnostic quiz. There's some recipes. It's like a good 30, 40 pages of just good stuff. So feel free to download that on my website. And then you can also go onto my bio in my Instagram and you can book a free consultation with me. So my calendar is up there. Feel free to book that if any of this resonated and you feel like you want some support. I 100% feel you. I know what it feels like. And yeah, I'm here. I'm here if you are wanting support. And
Awesome.
I do run these monthly challenges, depending on when
Hmm.
this challenges, it might be happening or not. But if you take a look at my Instagram bio, I typically will update when I am doing the challenges. So yeah, stay tuned there.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us again. And I really enjoyed this conversation, and a lot of our values are very similar. And, I think that everyone listening will find this really helpful. So yeah, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. No, it was good. It was good. For everyone listening, as always, be kind to yourself, be patient, and focus on progress, not perfection. And we'll see you in the next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode or learned something new, please share it with someone who can also benefit from it. I'd love to connect with you. Send me a DM on Instagram at holistic.hormones.pharmacist.